to make it fit on 2 pages. But I'm going to go through and sort of tell you some of the major changes that we have. Rule number 2 is new. Before, if you'll recall, we had a meeting of the full committee to assign bills to the subcommittee. I don't think we're going to do that this year. I think that all of us have more things to do with our time than to hear somebody present a sales tax bill and say we are going to assign it to the sales tax subcommittee. And so in this year, if these rules are adopted, we will assign to the subcommittee that they need to be assigned to, and then we will let the committee members actually spend their time vetting bills and voting on bills rather than just hearing somebody present a bill so it can be assigned to subcommittee. So rule number 2 is new. Rule number 6 is not new. It is just basically a clarification of what we've been doing in the past, but making it clear who are ex officio members. Rule number 8 is a clarification, but it's been in practice. Rule number 9 is a clarification, and what it specifically says is that if a fiscal note is required, the committee or the committee staff will obtain that fiscal note. I know from past experience when I filed a bill, I didn't know whether I was supposed to be obtaining the fiscal note or whether the committee or the chair would obtain it. This makes it clear that the committee or the chair will ask and request that fiscal note, and we'll track it. The other thing that it makes clear is that if it is a bill that has a tax cap, like for instance an income tax or a credit, and that credit has a cap, that serves as its own fiscal note, and there will not be a separate fiscal note required. If the cap's $10 million a year, then that's the maximum exposure that the state treasury has, so there's no point in having a separate fiscal note. And that makes that clarification. Number 10 is a clarification of what we've been doing in the past, which is to require, unless waived, a minimum of 2 subcommittee hearings on each bill before it can pass to full committee. Rule number 11 is a clarification of existing practice. We have in the past tried not to amend bills in full committee, but to do the bulk of the work in subcommittee. This makes it clear that in the event that it's something other than a technical change or a grammatical change, that if it's a substantive change, it will be sent back unless the chair rules otherwise. It'll be sent back to subcommittee where the bulk of the work is going to be done anyway, and that committee's already heard it several times, so it makes sense for that committee to fix anything that needs to be fixed. And then number 19 is new, but it's what I talked about before, which is that the other subcommittee chairs and the officers of the committee can preside at any subcommittee meeting that the chair of that subcommittee is unable or is conflicted out in serving. And having said all of that, I would entertain a motion. All right, there's motion, second. Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's passed. All right, then the last thing that I want to take up with y'all is just to sort of let y'all know what I see as the purpose of this committee in the future. And that's certainly going to evolve because what I imagine in theory might work probably won't work in reality. But I really want us to be, as a committee, to be responsible to the state treasury. And I want the committee members and whether it be industry lobbyists or members of the General Assembly who want to present a bill to this committee to sort of know what we're operating under. And quite frankly, I would like for us to develop some procedures for vetting bills so that you can know whether it's got a reasonable chance of passage and whether we know that this is something that we want to consider so that none of us waste our time on things that aren't going anywhere. For instance, any nonprofit could argue that they need a sales tax exemption because it makes their dollars go further. And if that applies to all nonprofits, then maybe we should give sales tax exemptions to all nonprofits. But I'm not suggesting we do that. But what I am suggesting is it's going to take something more other than it's going to make our dollars go further for a sales tax exemption for a nonprofit organization to, in my opinion, to pass muster in this committee. It might take something that it's going to have a positive impact on the state budget from the standpoint of, putting something on the ad valorem tax rolls or something that's going to employ people because of the sales tax exemption or whatever it is, but it's got to have a positive impact. It can't be just for the benefit of the donors to the nonprofit that it's going to make their dollars go further, because that would apply to any nonprofit. So we need to provide something that is going to be something, and I would like for feedback from the committee, and I would also like feedback from industry or folks that are interested in the work of this committee. And I've also requested from the governor similar kind of feedback, because this is sort of a work in process, but it needs to be something that we can all look at and say this is good for the state of Georgia, not just for an individual nonprofit. So that's one of the things I want us to do as far as sales tax exemptions, income tax exemptions. Similarly, as far as sales income tax credits, it's got to serve some kind of useful purpose that's going to benefit or impact the state of Georgia, whether it's bringing in an industry that does not now exist in Georgia, promoting or incubating a fledgling industry, creation of jobs, creation of capital in the state of Georgia, but we just can't give out something that's not going to have a positive impact on the state of Georgia. So keep those things in mind. We will be looking for all bills that come before the committee that provide either exemptions or credits are going to have some kind of sunset. We're going to request that all bills that come before the committee have some mechanism for tracking. If this bill is supposed to create 5,000 jobs, then we are going to put something in the bill that mandates that be tracked, and that when it comes up for renewal of the sunset, we will have some information and some data as to whether it in fact created 5,000 jobs. So we're going to be looking at things that have a positive impact and that we can track and substantiate. I have asked Paul Battles, who is going to chair the Tax Reform Subcommittee, to look at existing sales tax exemptions and income tax credits and go in and retroactively look at these and maybe put in sunsets that in the ones that don't currently have sunsets, and also put in tracking data so that we can, in the future, when those bills come up for renewal or those exemptions come up for renewal, we can have some tracking data that we can look at to judge those. And so anyway, that's sort of what I'm going to be asking this committee to do. It's going to require a little bit more work, but when we get through, it'll be something that, at least on paper, it looks like that we've had a positive impact on the budget of the state of Georgia. And I think that we need to look at that. We cannot continue narrowing the tax base by giving out exemptions and credits without having something that is going to benefit the state of Georgia for a long term. Otherwise, we're going to wind up with one taxpayer sometime or another, because all of us are going to have exemptions. So anyway, unless there's other business to come before the committee, we've already had several bills that have been assigned to the committee. The chairs of the various subcommittees and the officers will be meeting to discuss these bills and the various speed at which they may be considered. And so we'll start having subcommittee meetings next week. I will tell you this, that the practice in the past where somebody had to clear with the chair as far as getting a bill on subcommittee calendar is no longer the case. If your bill has been assigned to the sales tax subcommittee, then Ben Harbin is the chair of that subcommittee, and you will talk to Mr. Harbin about a date for your hearing, and he can schedule it either in the Ways and Means office or over here or wherever there's availability at the time that he wants to have that meeting. But you don't have to clear those through the Ways and Means office anymore. You can just directly talk to Mr. Harbin about that or any other subcommittee chair. You will be asked, and you'll be getting a letter from Jeremy in our office. When your bill has been assigned to a subcommittee, you'll get a letter saying that it has been assigned to a certain subcommittee and requesting that you fill out a request for a hearing in whichever subcommittee it has been assigned. And if you don't fill out that request, then don't expect a hearing. But if you fill out that request, you will be entitled to a hearing. So unless there are any questions, is there? Question? Do I hear a motion? We adjourn. Second? We're adjourned.